has seen Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari sworn in for a second term in office. And in Uganda, the country mourns the untimely demise of the longest-serving Prime Minister, Professor Apollo Robin Nsimbambi. Our condolences to the family, friends, and indeed nation of Uganda at this trying of moments. Here's a peek of the stories set in store today.
Malaria vaccine, Ghana jabs back against disease. Tradition meets tech, how does it adapt to climate change? A month after the fall of Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir, citizens insist that the price of bread remains too high.
I'm Lenny Rashid, and our sign language interpreter is Teresia Washira. Before we get into the main stories, let's take a look at the news that made the headlines around the continent.
Sudan's alliance of opposition and protest groups held the first day of a strike on Tuesday as tension mounted with the country's military rulers over the transition to democracy. Talks between the ruling Transitional Military Council and the Declaration of Freedom and Change Forces Alliance are at a standstill despite weeks of negotiations over whether civilian or the military have the upper hand after the ousting of longtime President Omar al-Bashir last month. Most staff in the medical sector, electricity offices, and employees at the central bank, as well as commercial banks, observed the strike, but other sectors were only partially affected. Many shops remained open while buses were still transporting residents, a Reuters witness said. The airport in Khartoum was operating normally, a civil aviation authority source and a state news agency, SUNA, said.
So help me God.
Malawi's President-elect Peter Mutharika was sworn in for a second term on Tuesday after winning a presidential election marred by allegations of rigging and sporadic violence. Results were due at the weekend but had to be delayed after court on Saturday granted the opposition an injunction after the Electoral Commission received 147 complaints of irregularities, including result sheets with sections blotted out or altered with correction fluid. The court lifted the injunction on Monday and the Electoral Commission declared Mutharika the narrow winner, with opposition parties grudgingly accepting the result after weekend protest by their supporters led to clashes with police. The small landlocked country won independence from Britain in 1964. After an initial period of economic and social stability, it is now ranked among the poorest countries in the world, reliant on donor funding and tobacco and tea exports. Mutharika won the election with a 38.57% share of the vote, with opposition party leader Lazarus Chakwera scoring 35.41% and Deputy President Saulos claiming 20.24% in the final tally.
President Macky Sall on Tuesday praised the virtues of dialogue, inviting Senegal's economic, political and social leaders to engage in meaningful rapprochement to facilitate development, strengthen security and deepen peace. Speaking in Dakar at the start of a national dialogue, the Senegalese leader said the initiative is an integral part of a sacred union. Regarding issues surrounding the discovery of oil and gas in Senegal, Sall spoke about his conviction that social inclusion should be an important factor in addressing the exploitation and transparency of industry in a responsible manner in order to find a strong consensus. The steering committee for the national dialogue is led by former socialist minister Famara Ibrahim Sagna. He is described by President Sall as a man of virtue of dialogue who has the capacity to overcome all divisions.
Nigeria's High Court on Tuesday ordered 5 top football bosses to face trial for corruption. They are accused of stealing millions of dollars intended to develop the game in the country. Nigerian Football Federation President Amaju Pinnick and 4 fellow co-accused face 17 charges for financial crimes at a trial in the capital city of Abuja. His co-accused are NFF Vice Presidents Seyu Akwiwumi and Shehu Diko, as well as General Secretary Mohamed Sanusi and Executive Committee member Ahmed Yusuf. Justice Ifeoma Ajuku ordered the 4 men appear for trial on 1st of July. The case examines a raft of charges, from failure to declare their assets to the alleged theft of $8.4 million paid by world governing body FIFA to Nigeria for participation in the 2014 World Cup in Brazil.
The exhumed body of Angolan rebel Chief Jonas Savimbi, who was killed in 2002, will be reburied in his hometown, authorities said after DNA test confirmed the identity of the remains. Savimbi, a charismatic warlord, fought Angola's socialist government in a 27-year civil war. He was killed in a battle against the People's Movement for the Liberation of Angola forces on 22nd February 2002. His death paved way for a peace deal that brought to an end one of Africa's longest and bloodiest conflict, which erupted after independence from Portugal in 1975. He was buried the day after he died in Angola's East Moxico province. Members of his family and UNITA had asked the government to bury Savimbi in his home village near the city of Quito.
Animal rights activists have urged Kenya to ban the slaughter of donkeys for Chinese medicine, a practice which has soared in recent years, decimating populations of the animal in Africa. Donkey skins are exported to China to make a traditional medicine known as a jiao, which is believed to improve blood circulation. It was once the preserve of emperors, but is now highly sought after by a burgeoning middle class. China is increasingly looking to Africa to satisfy demand, as its own donkey population has nearly halved in recent years. Several African countries have banned the export of donkey skins and closed Chinese-owned slaughterhouses, meaning thousands are now tracked long distances into Kenya from countries such as Ethiopia, Uganda and Somalia.
According to the World Health Organization, an estimated 219 million people were infected with malaria in 2017. More than 90% of these cases occurred on the African continent. Around 430,000 people succumbed to the disease, known by its lab initials RTSS. It's the first vaccine that has demonstrated it can significantly reduce malaria in children. In clinical trials, the vaccine was found to prevent approximately 4 in 10 malaria cases. RTSS was recently rolled out in Ghana.
Following in the footsteps of Malawi, Ghana has become the second African country to roll out the world's first proven anti-malaria vaccine. In a country that had over 5 million confirmed cases of malaria last year, it's hoped that this new measure will reduce the risk of children contracting the disease.
I believe that if we perform the injection early, it will help us not to have to rush in the future and spend so much money on disease prevention. If we prevent it from the start, it will help.
The Ewim Polyclinic Health Centre in Cape Coast recorded over 1,000 cases of malaria in children under the age of 5 last year. Ellen Apraku, a maternity ward nurse, is tasked with explaining the benefits of the vaccine to local mothers. She highlights the considerable economic benefits alongside the health benefits of the new treatment.
You see, right now, the malaria treatment is very costly. I think it's very costly. And right now, there's no money. So if we were able to prevent it, at least the parents will have much money to take good care of their children.
It's a point of view that's shared by other healthcare professionals in Ghana.
So economically, when you get malaria, the family's income loses some income because the time that you spend to look after the child, you have used the time for other things. So it will go a long way. This vaccine is able to reduce malaria in children under 5. I'm sure it will help.
The Mosquirix vaccine is to be used as a complementary tool, augmenting but not replacing measures such as insecticide-treated bed nets and anti-mosquito sprays. The aim in Ghana is to vaccinate 120,000 children per year over the next 3 years. The next country to implement the vaccine will be Kenya.
Nomadic herders in East Africa's drylands have endured climate variability for millennia, driving their relentless search for water and pasture in some of the world's most inhospitable terrain. But their resilience is being tested by climate change, forcing a rethink of traditional wisdom passed down for generations. However, a mobile service is now providing subscribers with weather updates for their locality.
For generations, Kaltuma Hassan's clan would study the sky over Kenya's arid north for any sign of rain to guide their parched livestock to water. But such divination has been rendered hopeless by intensifying droughts. Days on foot can reveal nothing more than bone-dry riverbeds and grazing land basked to dust, sounding the death knell for their herd.
People used to depend on indigenous knowledge from experts within the communities, and then maybe the meteorological departments and radio stations. But apparently, my anger, I can reach it through my phone.
But today, the 42-year-old relies on detailed rainfall forecasts received via text message from a Kenyan tech firm to plan her migrations, a simple but life-changing resource for an ancient community learning to adapt to increasing weather extremes.
Mfugo wangu ingeisha because hata kuna wakati penye tumepeleka ni mali tulimwambia tu, mnajua area ya Mount Colal area Ilaut hayo mvua imenyesha, malisho yako ni mzuri. Tulipeleka mali kwa mali yote ilisha kwa barabara, kwa sababu tulienda tulikuta hakuna kitu. Kurudi tena kutafuta pasi nyingine mali inakufa tu one by one. Lakini ingekuwa na app singebahatisha, naenda tu direct.
The service uses advanced weather data from a US agricultural intelligence firm, which provides subscribers with rain and forage conditions for the week ahead in their locality. The forecasts are sent as text messages, so they are compatible with basic phones often used by pastoralists in remote areas.
We have a target of reaching 100,000, and remember we are working both in Kenya and Ethiopia. In Kenya we're working in Marsabit and Isiolo. Right now we're in Marsabit, and in Ethiopia we're working in the Oromia region and the Somali region, the southern part of Ethiopia on this project. So the entire outreach for these two areas is meant to be 100,000 directly. So in Kenya about 50, in Ethiopia another 50,000 households.
Kenyan IT firm Amfratech, which launched the SMS service earlier this year, has also rolled out a more advanced app-based version. They hope to eventually sign up tens of thousands of pastoralists.
Coming up after the break.
We are in Madagascar, where Frenchman Nicolas Dupuis is set to lead the country to their maiden AFCON appearance.
We're about to pay some bills. Don't touch that dial. Keep it switched. In case you just joined us, you're watching Africa Focus. Today's sign language interpreter is Teresia Washira. The Ebola outbreak in the eastern part of the Democratic Republic of Congo is the 10th outbreak in the country since 1976. In the two provinces affected by this latest outbreak, North Kivu and Ituri, insecurity and armed conflicts have made this response more difficult than in previous outbreaks. But how is the disease spread and what are its symptoms? Let's find out.
Ebola is one of the deadliest viruses known to man. It's named after a small river in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where it first emerged in 1976. Up to 90% of infected individuals die from the virus. The African fruit bat is considered a natural carrier of the infection. Gorillas, chimps, monkeys, antelope and porcupines are also susceptible to catching and spreading the disease. There are 5 distinct species of Ebola: Zaire, Sudan, Bandibungo, Reston and Thai forest. They're spread through contact with the blood, body fluids and tissues of an infected person. After an incubation period of between 2 and 21 days, symptoms include severe fever, weakness, muscle pain, headaches, and a sore throat. This generally develops into vomiting, diarrhea, rash, impaired kidney and liver function, and sometimes internal and external bleeding to death. The Ebola virus multiplies quickly.
As women around the world come forward with stories of sexual harassment, a report by the Thomson Reuters Foundation shows that Cairo is the world's most dangerous megacity for women. The city has become more perilous since the 2011 uprisings, but now some Egyptian women are taking matters into their own hands by learning Indonesian martial arts so as to fight off harassment.
In the heart of Egypt's capital, a martial arts sport once used to fight colonialism in a small Indonesian village is now helping dozens of women stand up to daily harassment. The women, mostly teenagers and young adults, gather in Cairo's Indonesian Cultural Center weekly and train to enhance their self-defense skills and fitness. With the help of Indonesian students studying in Egypt, over 1,200 women and children are learning the sport in Cairo, which they hope will help them fight ongoing street harassment.
One needs these skills right now because this will make us stronger.
Experts surveyed by the Thomson Reuters Foundation last year ranked Cairo as the world's most dangerous megacity for women, based on lack of protection from sexual violence and harmful cultural practices, as well as poor access to healthcare and finance. Pencastilat gained prominence in Egypt in 2003, but started to increase in popularity in 2011, according to trainer Rokaya Samalusi.
Of course, there are problems in the streets. If someone comes near me, I'm able to defend myself well. I have confidence now and no one can harass me because I can face them.
The sport dates back to the 6th century, where it was practiced in the areas of Sumatra and the Malay Peninsula, two kingdoms. The Sriwijaya in Sumatra and the Majapahit in Java used the fighting skills, and between the 7th and 16th century ruled much of what is now Indonesia, Malaysia and Singapore.
At the beginning, it was not known, but now it has spread extensively. We have now exceeded 1,200 children and women players in this school.
Influences of Hindu weapons, Nepalese music, Indian grappling styles, Siamese costumes, Arabian weapons and Chinese fighting methods are found in Pencastilat due to trade, migration and wars.
It teaches us how to defend ourselves, while also it does not have any age or weight requirements.
Pencak is the performance aspect of the discipline, while Silat is the fighting and self-defense version of the sport.
The Muslims in Indonesia started their struggle against colonialism by establishing a group who used the self-defense martial arts.
There are many different techniques in Silat, but players usually focus on strikes, joint manipulation and throws. In 3 2-minute round bouts, players earn a point for punches, 2 points for kicks and 3 points for takedowns. Pencastilat has more than 150 variations of style across the nation and utilizes hand and feet movements. However, its popularity has diminished among Indonesia's young population.
5 months after the trebling of bread prices and with the fall of Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir, citizens and bakery owners in Khartoum insist that the price of the staple remains too high, despite a drop back from a January peak of £3 per loaf.
As the sun sets over Khartoum, a group of Sudanese men walk into a bakery to buy bread ahead of breaking their dawn to dusk fast in the holy month of Ramadan. Bread has been a hard commodity to come by these days. It was a trebling of bread prices in December that ignited initial protests against long-term autocrat Omar al-Bashir. 5 months on, and with al-Bashir deposed, citizens and bakery owners insist that the price of the staple remains too high, despite a drop back from a January peak of 3 Sudanese pounds per loaf.
I don't think that people participated in the revolution only because of the bread. There were other services that were down, such as healthcare, the weak education system, and the weak purchasing power. The citizen could not bear it.
Bakery owner ABDELRAHIM Mohamed said that although bread prices were the trigger that brought people onto the streets, citizens were also angry about other issues.
In the past, the Sudanese pound bought 2 pieces of bread. Now it only buys 1. Prices of flour have risen as well as gas, which impact the production. So we have reduced the size of the loaves, not to face losses.
Fatma Hussein, who works at Mohamed's bakery, relies heavily on the free bread she gets from her employer.
Bread prices are expensive. You only get one loaf for £1. If I had 7 children, I could not buy 7 loaves. I would need at least £50 a day. Income in Sudan is limited. Although everyone in the household is working, mothers, husbands and children, to make a living.
The bread crisis was also fueled by a January 2018 government decision to stop importing grain, which left the task to private companies. This led to a decline in the supply of wheat in turn, forcing flour producers to raise their tariffs and sending bread prices skyrocketing. Bakers say bread is more easily available these days, with traders sourcing subsidized locally produced wheat amid the ongoing harvest season, which ends in July.
The prices have not increased in the market. All the prices are normal, but we suffer from a recession.
Sudan, a country of about 40 million people, is a major wheat importer. It ships in about 2.5 million tons annually despite its own domestic production of about 700,000 tons. Observers say that a $3 billion aid package offered by oil-rich Gulf states Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates since al-Bashir's ouster is also expected to help tackle the bread crisis in the near to medium term.
When Frenchman Nicolas DUPUIS isn't training 4th Division minnows FLEURY, an hour outside Paris, he's halfway across the world coaching Madagascar. Earlier this year, the country qualified for their maiden appearance at the African Cup of Nations. Football powerhouse Egypt is set to host the tournament from the 21st of June to the 19th of July at 6 venues across the country.
Nicolas DUPUIS is a man who wears 2 hats. When he's not coaching FC FLEURY 91 in the French 4th Division, you will find him putting Madagascar national team up to the paces in Antananarivo, Madagascar's capital. There are 2 places and 2 missions that he wants to lead thoroughly.
It was a party. It's historic. It's extraordinary. In fact, because everyone, the whole country was even more than impatient, frustrated, very frustrated that there were no results. And now, all the work we did is bearing fruit, and it's good for everyone.
In Brouillet, in a Somme, where Froliacan players are training on a synthetic turf land between fields, Madagascar seems very far, and yet part of the future of the Malagasy selection is played there.
In Madagascar, the DTN, one of the football's governing body, is run very poorly, and football has trouble growing. And the best players are all abroad. For example, out of the 23 players I'm going to take to the African Cup of Nations, there may be, on principle, 2 or 3 local players, but that's all, unfortunately. And again, I say on principle, because if I took the 23 best Malagasy players, there would be no locals. So there is a lot to do in Madagascar.
Such a position at this level is unlikely, yet everything went naturally according to President Pascal Bovi, who knows the Red Island well and accepted the special timetable of the coach, which might not be possible for clubs in upper echelons of France.
I accepted the job after some thought. I accepted because Madagascar is already giving me the time to do so, and because things are clear with President Bovis, the president of FLEURY.
After 20 years in Zurich, which he raised from the 3rd regional level of France, DUPUIS knows how to start the elevator, in which FLEURY, 2nd in 2017 and 4th in 2018, hopes to quickly climb. But his task today is to maintain the club's status quo, after the club was plunged into the relegation zone, as well as Madagascar's preparation for the African Cup of Nations in Egypt.
On Africa Focus, we love hearing from you, so make sure you get interactive with us on our various social media pages. Remember, you can view this program along with a wide array of programs on DSTV channel 268 and on Azan TV channel 138. On behalf of the entire team here on Africa Focus, thank you for keeping us company on this exciting journey throughout the continent. Do enjoy the rest of your viewing. Keep it switch.